Remember when cars had personality? When you could tell what was coming down the street just by the sound of its engine or the shape of its headlights? The 90s gave us some of the most distinctive, innovative, and downright cool cars ever made. Then they disappeared, victims of changing tastes, tightening regulations, or corporate bean counters who didn't get it. Today we're counting down 10 cars from the 1990s that absolutely deserve a comeback. And trust me, number 1 is going to make you wonder why it ever left in the first place. Let's dive in. Number 10. Mazda RX-7 FD. The third generation RX-7 that debuted in 1992 was pure automotive art. Sleek, timeless, powered by a twin-turbo rotary engine that sounded like nothing else on the road. This wasn't just a sports car. It was a philosophy on wheels. The philosophy that said weight is the enemy, that perfect 50-50 weight distribution matters, and that sometimes doing things differently is worth it. The FD RX-7 weighed just 2,800 pounds. That's about 1,000 pounds less than a modern sports car with similar performance. Mazda achieved this through obsessive weight reduction. Aluminum hood, magnesium steering wheel core. They even used a smaller battery and thinner glass. Every ounce mattered. The result was a car that danced through corners like it was telepathically connected to your thoughts. But the real magic was that 13 B-Rebu twin-turbo rotary engine, 1.3 liters, 255 horsepower in stock form. But here's the thing about rotaries. They love boost. And I mean, they love it. With basic modifications, 350 horsepower was easy, 400 was common, 500 plus, absolutely doable. The engine was basically indestructible if you kept it properly maintained and didn't let it overheat. The sequential twin-turbo system was genius. One small turbo for quick response at low RPMs, then a larger turbo joining the party at 4,700 RPM. No lag. Just smooth, progressive power delivery all the way to the 8,000 RPM redline. It felt like a naturally aspirated engine with forced induction power. Revolutionary for the time. Inside, the FD was pure driver focus. The gauges swept around you in a gentle arc. The steering wheel was perfectly sized. The seats held you in place without being uncomfortable on long drives. It wasn't luxurious, but it wasn't stripped out either. It was just right. Like Mazda knew exactly what a sports car interior should be and executed it perfectly. The FD died in 2002, killed by emissions regulations and poor fuel economy. Mazda tried bringing back rotary power with the RX-8, but it wasn't the same. Too heavy. Too many compromises. The FD was the last pure expression of Mazda's rotary sports car vision. With modern emissions technology and hybrid assistance, a new RX-7 could work. Mazda's even shown concepts. Come on, Mazda. The world needs more roaring rotaries. Number 9. Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4. The 3000 GT VR4 was Mitsubishi showing off. Every piece of technology they could cram into a car, they did. All-wheel drive, four-wheel steering, active aerodynamics, twin turbos, adjustable suspension. In 1991, this was basically a spaceship with license plates. It made other sports cars look ancient. The stats were ridiculous for the time. 320 horsepower from a 3-liter twin-turbo V6, 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds, top speed electronically limited to 155 miles per hour, though everyone knew it could go faster. All-wheel drive meant you could use all that power even in the rain. The four-wheel steering made it feel smaller than it was in tight corners. This wasn't just fast in a straight line, it was fast everywhere. But the party tricks went beyond performance. The active aero system adjusted the front and rear spoilers based on speed. Above 45 miles per hour, they'd automatically deploy to increase downforce. The electronically controlled suspension had two modes, Tour and Sport. Tour was genuinely comfortable. Sport was track-ready firm. You could literally transform the car's character with the push of a button. The interior was pure 90s excess in the best way. Digital everything. More buttons than a fighter jet. The dash looked like it belonged in a concept car. Leather everywhere. Even a CD player, which was still exotic in 1991. The VR4 didn't just want to be fast, It wanted you to know you were in something special every second you were behind the wheel. Here's what killed it: complexity and cost. All that technology meant more things to break. And break they did. The active aero system was notorious for failing. The four-wheel steering added complexity most mechanics couldn't handle. The twin-turbo setup was cramped and hard to work on. By the late 90s, simpler, more reliable sports cars were eating its lunch. Mitsubishi finally killed the 3000 GT in 1999. They tried to recapture the magic with the Eclipse, but it was never the same. The VR4 was Mitsubishi at their ambitious best, throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. With modern reliability and electronics, a new 3000 GT could work. Imagine the VR4 formula with today's technology: electric front axle for instant torque vectoring, adaptive suspension that actually works, active aero that doesn't break every 5,000 miles. Mitsubishi, are you listening? Your glory days are calling. Number 8, Acura Integra Type R. The Integra Type R wasn't just a hot hatch, it was Honda engineering at its absolute peak. 195 horsepower from a naturally aspirated 1.8-liter four-cylinder, that's 108 horsepower per liter, without turbos, without superchargers. Just brilliant engineering and an 8,400 RPM redline that sounded like mechanical music. Honda hand-built these engines. Actually hand-built. Each one was assembled by a single technician who signed their work. Pistons were weighed and matched. Connecting rods were balanced to within a gram. The result was an engine that felt like it wanted to rev forever. And it basically could. These engines were bulletproof. Track day after track day, they just kept singing to 8,400 RPM without complaint. The weight reduction was obsessive. No sound deadening. No air conditioning unless you specifically ordered it. Thinner glass. No vanity mirrors. The spare tire was a space saver. They even removed the rear wiper. Every pound mattered. The result? 2,600 pounds. In a front-wheel drive car, that's the difference between good and magical. The Type R wasn't about straight line speed, it was about the perfect connection between driver and road. The steering was telepathic. The helical limited slip differential meant you could power out of corners without torque steer. The suspension was firm but not harsh. It was tuned on racetracks but still worked on real roads. This was a car you could drive to the track, dominate in your class, and drive home. But here's what made it truly special: the way it made you feel. Every drive was an event. The engine begging you to rev it higher. The shifter clicking through gears with rifle bolt precision. The steering telling you exactly what the front tires were doing. Modern cars are faster, but few are as engaging. The Type R made you a better driver because it demanded your full attention and rewarded it with pure driving joy. The US only got the Type R for 1997 and 98. 2 years, that's it. Then it was gone, replaced by the heavier, softer RSX. Honda brought back the Type R badge with the Civic, and it's brilliant, but it's not the same. It's turbocharged now. Heavier, more complex. The Integra. Type R was the last of the pure, naturally aspirated Type Rs. Simple. Light. Perfect. Honda's brought back the Integra name, but where's the Type R? The world needs more 9,000 RPM naturally aspirated screamers. Number 7, Toyota MR2 Turbo. The second generation, MR2. Turbo was Toyota's attempt to build a baby Ferrari, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, turbocharged, pop-up headlights. In profile, it looked like a 328 that shrunk in the wash. But this wasn't just a styling exercise. The MR2 Turbo was a genuine performance car that could embarrass much more expensive machinery. The 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder made 200 horsepower in US spec. Not earth-shattering today, but in 1991, that was serious power for a 2,700-pound car. The Japanese version made 240 horsepower. Even better, the engine was mounted right behind your head. You could hear every whistle from the turbo, every blast from the wastegate. It was automotive theater. But the real magic was the handling. Mid-engine cars are notoriously tricky at the limit. Lift off mid-corner in an MR2, and it would try to kill you. The snap-oversteer was legendary. But if you knew what you were doing, if you respected it, the MR2 was incredibly capable. It could change direction like nothing else in its price range. The steering was immediate, the balance was perfect. This was a car that taught you to be smooth, to be deliberate, because it would punish mistakes instantly. Toyota kept improving it. The 1993 revision addressed some of the handling quirks. Revised suspension geometry made it less likely to swap ends without warning. They added a larger turbo for better response. The brakes got bigger. But they kept the essential character. This was still a demanding, rewarding sports car that treated driving as a skill to be developed, not a chore to be automated. The interior was typical Toyota from this era, which means it was built like a bank vault. Everything felt solid. Nothing rattled. The controls were exactly where you expected them. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. The only real complaint was storage space, or rather the complete lack of it. The front trunk was tiny. The rear trunk was a joke. Behind the seats, you might fit a jacket. This was not a car for road trips. Unless your idea of luggage is a credit card and a change of underwear. The MR2 died in 2005, replaced by the MR2 Spider. Lighter, less powerful, and somehow less interesting. Toyota teased us with the SFR concept that looked like a modern MR2. Then, nothing. Now they're building the GR Yaris and GR Corolla, which are brilliant, but imagine a modern MR2 with the GR Yaris's 3-cylinder turbo mounted behind the seats, 300 horsepower, 2,500 pounds, 6-speed manual. Toyota, the template is right there. Build it. Number 6, GMC Syclone and Typhoon. The GMC Syclone and Typhoon were the answer to a question nobody asked. What if we put a turbocharged V6 in a compact pickup truck and SUV, added all-wheel drive, and made them faster than a Ferrari? In 1991, that's exactly what GMC did. The result was gloriously absurd and impossibly cool. The Syclone pickup could hit 60 miles per hour in 4.3 seconds. In 1991, that was faster than a Ferrari 348, faster than a Corvette, faster than basically everything that didn't have wings. Car and Driver tested one against a Ferrari 348 in a drag race. The Syclone won. A pickup truck beat a Ferrari in a straight line. Let that sink in for a moment. The 4.3-liter V6 made 280 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. That might not sound like much today, but remember, this was 1991. The turbo was specifically tuned for low-end grunt, maximum torque at 2,400 RPM. The all-wheel drive system split power 35% front, 65% rear. Launch it hard, and all 4 tires would chirp. It was violent. It was addictive. But here's the beautiful absurdity. The Syclone couldn't actually truck. The sports suspension meant the payload capacity was just 500 pounds. The all-wheel drive system couldn't be switched to 4-wheel drive for off-roading. It was lower than a standard Sonoma, so ground clearance was a joke. GMC built a truck that was terrible at truck things, but amazing at embarrassing sports cars. I love everything about that. The Typhoon was the Syclone formula applied to the Jimmy SUV. Same engine, same all-wheel drive, same face-melting acceleration, but now you had room for people and stuff. It was marginally more practical, which is like saying a chainsaw is marginally better than a sword for cutting bread. Both were sledgehammers in a world of finishing nails. Only 2,995 Syclones were made. 4,697 Typhoons. That's it. They were expensive, impractical, and absolutely pointless. Which is exactly why they're now worth stupid money. Clean examples trade for $50,000 or more. Because sometimes the best vehicles are the ones that make no sense at all. GMC, you're building the Hummer EV with 1,000 horsepower. How about a spiritual successor to the Syclone? Electric motors, stupid fast acceleration, completely impractical. The world needs more absurd performance trucks. Number 5, Nissan 300ZX Twin Turbo. The Z32 and 300ZX Twin Turbo was Nissan's technological tour de force. 300 horsepower from a 3-liter twin-turbo V6, 4-wheel steering, adjustable suspension. In 1990, this was Nissan, saying we can build a car as advanced as anything from Germany or Italy, And they were right. The 300ZX was a technological masterpiece, but it was the details that made it special. The twin-turbo setup used parallel turbos, one for each bank of cylinders, for instant response. Variable valve timing on both intake and exhaust cams. This was exotic stuff in 1990. The Super Hikis four-wheel steering could turn the rear wheels up to 1 degree to improve high-speed stability or turn response. The adjustable suspension had comfort and sport modes that actually made a difference. The engine was underrated from the factory. 300 horsepower? Try 320 on a dyno. With basic modifications, 400 horsepower was easy. 500 was common. 600 plus, absolutely achievable. The VG30DT engine was overbuilt, forged internals from the factory. It could handle serious boost without major internal work. This was a tuner's dream before anyone knew what tuner culture would become. The interior was pure 1990s Japanese luxury. Digital gauges that looked like they belonged in a spaceship. Leather everywhere. Every surface was soft touch before that was a marketing term. The seats were perfect Gran Turismo chairs. Comfortable for hours, but supportive when you decided to attack a mountain road. The 2+2 configuration meant you could pretend it was practical, as long as your rear passengers had no legs. Here's what killed it: complexity and cost. By 1996, a twin-turbo cost over $40,000. That was Corvette money. The engine bay was so cramped that basic maintenance required removing half the car. Changing the spark plugs was a 4-hour job. The turbos were notorious for dying around 60,000 miles. When they did, the repair bill was astronomical. Nissan killed the 300ZX in 1996, then went without a Z car until the 350Z in 2003. Now we have the new Z, which is brilliant, but it's naturally aspirated. Where's the twin-turbo madness? Where's the four-wheel steering? Where's the sense that Nissan engineers were given unlimited budget and told to go crazy? The 300ZX twin-turbo was Nissan at their ambitious best. That ambition needs to return. Number 4. Ford SVT Lightning. The 1993-95 Ford SVT Lightning was subtle. Too subtle. It looked basically like a regular F-150 with different wheels and a small spoiler, but under the hood was a 5.8-liter V8 making 240 horsepower. Not earth-shattering, but in a regular cab, short bed truck, it was enough to make things interesting. Then Ford killed it. For 4 years. When the Lightning returned in 1999, Ford had learned their lesson. Subtlety was dead. The new Lightning had flared fenders, massive wheels, and side exhaust. It looked like a truck that had been hitting the gym and maybe doing a little something extra on the side. Under the hood was a 5.4-liter V8 with an Eaton supercharger making 360 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. The second-generation Lightning was legitimately quick. 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds, quarter mile in 13.6. These were sports car numbers from a 5,400-pound truck. But here's the thing. It could still truck. Payload capacity was 800 pounds. You could tow 5,000 pounds. This wasn't a Syclone situation where they ruined the truck to make it fast. This was a fast truck that was still a truck. The supercharger whine was intoxicating. Floor it and you'd hear this rising mechanical scream as the Eaton blower crammed air into the engine. It was addictive. The massive 295 width rear tires would struggle for traction even on dry pavement. First gear was basically useless. Second gear was where the fun started. Third gear was where you realized this thing was seriously fast. Ford kept improving it. The 2001 got 380 horsepower. The 2003 got a new Eaton blower and made 390. With basic modifications, a smaller supercharger pulley, cold air intake, tune. 450 horsepower was easy. 500 was common. These engines were tough. The bottom end could handle serious power. The Lightning died in 2004, a victim of changing tastes in the incoming F-150 redesign. Ford teased us with Lightning concepts over the years, but never pulled the trigger. Now they have the F-150 Lightning, but it's electric, which is fine, but it's not the same. The world needs supercharged V8 trucks that can roast tires and haul mulch. Ford, You're building the Raptor R with 700 horsepower. How about a street-focused Lightning with the same engine? Number 3, Volkswagen Corrado VR6. The Corrado VR6 was Volkswagen's attempt to build a proper sports coupe, not a hot hatch, not a warmed-over Golf, a genuine purpose-built sports car. And you know what? They nailed it. The VR6 engine was a masterpiece of packaging, 2.8 liters, 6 cylinders, 178 horsepower. But here's the clever bit. It was narrow enough to fit transversely in a compact car. The VR6 was basically a V6 with a 15-degree angle between the cylinder banks, so narrow that both banks could share a single cylinder head. It was brilliant packaging that gave you 6-cylinder smoothness in a 4-cylinder footprint. The sound was unique too. Not quite inline 6 smooth, not quite V6 raspy, something in between. Something distinctly Volkswagen. But the Corrado was more than just its engine. The active rear spoiler that rose at 45 miles per hour was pure theater. The handling was surprisingly capable for a front driver. The G60 supercharged version had come before, but the VR6 was the one everyone wanted. It was faster, smoother, and more reliable than the supercharged 4-cylinder. The interior was peak Volkswagen. Everything felt hewn from granite. The dashboard was a model of logical German design. The seats were perfect and supportive, but not confining. The driving position was spot on. This felt like a car built by engineers who actually cared about driving. Not just numbers on a spec sheet, but the actual experience of piloting the thing. Here's what made the Corrado special. It wasn't trying to be anything other than what it was. It wasn't a BMW fighter. It wasn't a Japanese sports car alternative. It was a Volkswagen sports coupe, practical enough to daily drive, fun enough to make you take the long way home, reliable enough to trust, unique enough to stand out. It was the thinking person's sports car. Volkswagen killed the Corrado in 1995. They tried to replace it with the Golf R32, which was brilliant, but different. Now we have the Arteon, which is handsome, but not the same thing. Volkswagen keeps teasing us with coupe concepts that never make production. The IDX looks amazing. Build it. Give it the Golf R's engine. Or go electric. Just give us a proper Corrado successor. The world needs more weird, wonderful Volkswagen coupes. Number 2. Plymouth Prowler. The Plymouth Prowler shouldn't exist. A retro-styled hot rod built by a major manufacturer with a V6 and no manual transmission option. On paper, it was all wrong, but in person, it was absolutely mesmerizing. This was Chrysler's designers and engineers being told to build something wild, and they delivered something nobody saw coming. The Prowler looked like a cartoon hot rod come to life. Open front wheels, cycle fenders, that impossibly long hood, the boat tail rear end. It was so wrong it was right. This wasn't trying to be practical or sensible. This was pure automotive art, a rolling sculpture that happened to be street legal. Barely. The aluminum-intensive construction was revolutionary for the time. Aluminum frame, aluminum body panels, aluminum suspension components. The result was a 2,800-pound curb weight despite the dramatic bodywork. This was cutting-edge stuff in 1997. Chrysler was using manufacturing techniques that wouldn't become mainstream for another decade. Yes, it only had a V6. The 3.5-liter making 253 horsepower. Everyone wanted a V8. But here's the thing. The V6 worked. It sounded good. It moved the lightweight Prowler to 60 in 5.9 seconds. Not earth-shattering, but respectable. And the open-wheel front design meant a V8 wouldn't fit without completely redesigning the car. The driving experience was unlike anything else. You sat low, almost on the ground. The open front wheels meant you could see the suspension working. The steering was immediate. The ride was surprisingly compliant. This wasn't a sports car in the traditional sense. It was a cruiser, a boulevardier, a car for making an entrance, and it was brilliant at that. The Prowler died in 2002, a victim of Chrysler's financial troubles and slow sales. Only 11,000 were built over 6 years. Chrysler never tried anything like it again. Now they're building Hellcats with 700 plus horsepower, which is great. But the Prowler represented something different. Creativity, risk-taking, building something because it was cool, not because it made business sense. The auto industry needs more Prowlers. More weird, wonderful, pointless exercises in automotive art. Number 1, Honda S2000. The Honda S2000 was perfect. I'll say it again. Perfect. A 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder that revved to 9,000 RPM, 240 horsepower without forced induction, rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual, 50-50 weight distribution, 100 pounds. A convertible that drove like a coupe. This was Honda showing the world what they could do when they really, really tried. The F20C engine was a masterpiece. VTEC, obviously, but this was VTEC taken to its logical extreme. Below 6,000 RPM, it was docile. Above 6,000, it transformed. The sound changed from pleasant to glorious. The power delivery went from linear to explosive. The tachometer needle would swing toward 9,000 RPM like it was magnetized, and it would do this all day long without complaint. But the S2000 wasn't just about the engine. The chassis was brilliant. The suspension was firm but not harsh. The steering was so immediate it felt hardwired to your brain. The shifter was the best Honda ever made, which is saying something. The driving position was perfect if you were under 6 feet tall. Everything fell exactly where it should. This was a driver's car, in the purest sense. Here's what made it truly special. Honda didn't compromise. They could have turbocharged it for more power. They didn't. They could have made it softer for more comfort. They didn't. They could have added power steering to make parking easier. They didn't, at least not at first. The S2000 was Honda's vision of the perfect sports car, executed without dilution. The digital gauge cluster was pure Honda. A digital tachometer bar graph that swept across the dash. It looked like something from a sport bike, which made sense since that's where the engine belonged. The red line would actually change with oil temperature. Cold engine? 6,000 RPM red line. Warmed up? 9,000 RPM of glory. It was Honda saying we built this engine to rev, but please warm it up first. The S2000 died in 2009, killed by the financial crisis and declining sports car sales. Honda hasn't built anything like it since. They tease us with concepts. The Sports Vision Gran Turismo, the S660 concept, but nothing makes production. Meanwhile, the Civic Type R proves Honda can still build amazing performance cars, but that's front-wheel drive. Turbocharged, the S2000 was something else. Pure, elemental, perfect. Honda, you're building the NSX with hybrid technology and turbochargers. That's great, but the world needs another S2000. A simple, naturally aspirated rear-wheel drive sports car that revs to the moon. No turbos, no hybrid assistance, just brilliant engineering and a complete focus on driving joy. The template is right there. You perfected it once. Do it again. And there you have it, 10 cars from the 90s that absolutely deserve to come back. Each one special in its own way. Each one representing a time when car companies took risks, tried weird things, and occasionally created magic. Sure, modern cars are faster, safer, and more efficient. But are they more interesting, more characterful, more fun? That's debatable. What do you think? Which of these would you bring back first? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more automotive nostalgia trips. Until next time, keep dreaming about the cars that got away.